Hello, everyone, and welcome to the third episode of my virtual book tour about the CLV Revolution. And today we are going to talk about chapter 3, The Power of Customer Value Optimization. And I'm here with Professor Peter Fader, the man when it comes to customer lifetime value. Hello.
Hey, it's great to talk to you. Congrats on the book. I'm just so happy to see it. I think it's such a great way to spread the word and to make it just so accessible and practical. So let's dive in.
Let's do it. So, Professor Fader, we are talking about the power of customer value optimization. Tell me what you think about chapter 3 and what you think about the overview, because basically we in chapter 3 we are talking about the method in itself.
Yes. Well, first of all, let's talk about the concept, the idea of customer value optimization. I mean, that's really been what's driving everything I've done academically and commercially for quite a number of years now. And it's not easy. It's not easy to do. It's not easy to get people to understand exactly what it means, why it's a benefit for them to prioritize it. So again, it's great to just lay it all out there. I mean, I'll admit that. Well, in my own work, I've spoken about very similar issues. Again, customer value optimization. But for me, it's always been, given my nature as an academic, it's been very technical. So let's focus very specifically on the models and the techniques and stuff like that. Sometimes missing the bigger picture. And I think you do a great job of laying out that bigger picture, the three pillars, and getting people to really understand what it is we're doing, and instead of just jumping into technical details.
Yeah, I've had a chat I think a few weeks ago with some really advanced people into the data analytics, and they told me that the best place on a data report for C-level execs is their logo, is their company's logo, because it's the only thing that they can recognize and feel familiar about what's going on in the data. So.
The world is changing. Yeah, that's right. And I really like the way it literally starts with and revolves around the three pillars. And what I like what you do there is you, instead of doing kind of what I do, which is to say, hey, marketers, you're doing it all wrong. Just forget about everything you've learned. Follow me instead. That doesn't work very well. Instead, you do a really nice job of building a bridge to contemporary marketing practice, to recognize that as much as we want to focus on the customer, no doubt, that we still have to be very mindful of the thing that we're selling, as well as the ways that we're selling it. And so I think you do just a really nice job of making the connection and kind of easing people along into our world, rather than making it quite so so abrupt as I often do.
Yeah, to give you the backstory on how I realized that we have these three pillars when it comes to customer lifetime value, like what you say, what you sell, what you do. I was in 2016, I think, and we were struggling a lot to help a very large company to move the needle, but they were selling crappy products, and everyone recognized that. So they've said that bluntly at some point, like, guys, do whatever you can with the marketing side of things. And that's when I realized that some companies are consciously trying to force their products into the market without being aware that no matter how much money they are throwing, and there is disconnection between the marketing budget and how it is decided to push on TV campaigns, on what they were doing at that moment, instead of fixing the product, the suppliers, the quality, and the customer experience. And that's what I think it's important to emphasize this from the very beginning, because at some point you can't move the needle it's garbage in, garbage out, right? If you're selling crappy products, you can't improve the CLV.
And not a lot of companies understand that. And it's not so much that in their mind they're saying, hey, how can we sell this crappy product? Of course, they're not doing that, but it's this eternal quest to find people who view it as acceptable, or who can find the just right message or use case, so that it won't seem as crappy. And so much of marketing is just that. I think I love the way that you come at it, which is it's just much more balanced. It's much more productive, and I think and just everything flows nicely from there. The way that you then build a bridge to things like, the way that we go about calculating customer lifetime value. Again, for me, it's this blunt instrument. Here's the model. The way that you focus on things like RFM, recency, frequency, monetary value, and instead of viewing it as a departure from regular marketing practice, you find a way to connect it, and that makes a big difference.
Yeah, I totally appreciate it, Professor Fader. One aspect that I think it worth mentioning is that we are now in this transitioning between the old models and the new models. We have this hype around AI, around automated everything, and we can be tempted to forget what are the fundamentals, and we can build all sorts of models to automatically outreach to our customers according to a plethora of parameters. But if we don't do our job, our basics, it doesn't matter how important is the targeting and the messaging if you don't sort out the basics. I think, at least up until the moment where humans will buy from companies, like when that when that moment will occur, if it's going to occur, then it's going to be another game in itself.
Yeah, it's a great point. I really worry about companies that feel that something like generative AI is going to be the solution to everything that ails them. Goes back to your point that generative AI can be so clever that it's a way to basically, well, sell the crappy product a little bit more effectively, but that's just not the way to grow. That's not sustainable. It really is just putting a different shade of lipstick on a pig. And yeah, we have to get back to the fundamentals. When I first learned marketing, I remember on day one, it was always learning the marketing concept: find a need and fill it. And too often these days, we have a thing over here. Let's just create a need. Let's convince people that they need this thing, even though they don't. It's not the right way to go. As opposed to finding out genuine needs that exist, needs that really to make people's lives easier and better, and then develop the product that serves the message.
Yeah.
It's easy, but we lose sight of that.
Yeah, and I guess that these worlds are now so polarized. I mean, I also noticed this, and maybe you can confirm if that's the case or not. We are not living in the middle anymore. So people are polarized towards what's real. We are seeing this in politics. We are seeing this in the corporate governance world. We are seeing this in our echo chambers on social media. It's like, if you don't agree from a political point of view with someone, then you should eliminate that, so that you can hear only your thoughts from the people that are like you. And I think this happens in the companies too. I mean, we need to build this type of bridges, because at the end of the day, the customer journey is what makes a company thrive and people have jobs.
It's a terrible combination. You're absolutely right. People are just inherently more polarized, but there's also just many more options available. And so it's in politics it's different, because generally there's two parties. You're going to go this way or that. But when it comes to buying things, there's going to be so many itty bitty little slightly different specialized things out there, and so it becomes very confusing. It becomes frustrating. You really don't know who to turn to. It's much tougher for the customer out there, and therefore much tougher for the managers to figure out exactly how to develop that product and which customers to go after. I yearn for the old days when life was a lot simpler, but we're never going back.
Yeah, it looks like the speed of development and let's say the way that things are being made right now, it's way more dynamic. And what I also want to touch a bit is on this methodology, which has to do also with with the voice of customer, because and I've talked this. I mean, I've dried my mouth around implementing what the customers really say about what's going on and getting the signals from the market, because we have large companies which are still not aware what's the voice of customer, and they make their decisions, and from there onwards they stuff things into their customer journey, into their business processes, into they adopt new tools like AI this, AI that, and then the customers maybe just needed the basic stuff, like not having a Frankenstein type of customer journey.
That's exactly right. Unfortunately, all this, the data analytics and technology, things that you and I both cherish,
Yeah.
are just making it much tougher. And yeah, too many options, too many. I think I love the way you describe it, the kind of Frankenstein customer journey. Yeah, we just overcomplicate things because we're capable of doing so, but it doesn't make it better.
Yeah, when we are contemplating let's say the current context, we can also see that we are in this, let's say, rapidly moving environment, and on the other hand, we still have companies which are not adopting change.
Right.
So there was this nice graph that I can try to describe. So on one axis, on the vertical, it was the speed of change in the outside world, and on the horizontal it was the speed of the companies change, so how fast the companies are changing and how fast the environment is changing. And usually it was always you should be going there above a certain threshold so that you can survive. And I think this is also happening right now. What do you think?
Well, and there's that other dimension. It's not only the kind of the speed of change, because too often just change for its own sake isn't good. In the same way that technology for its own sake isn't good, and so companies feel this need to change. They feel they need to, keep changing the message, whether it's to the employees, the stakeholders, the customers. See, we're changing, we're evolving. Look at us, we're dynamic. But
Yeah,
that doesn't necessarily mean it's getting better.
yeah, it's busy
Uh,
versus productive, right?
Exactly right. And so that's why having a little discipline, being able to both kind of organize and prioritize those changes, as well as to measure their effectiveness and learn from them. And that's where the whole CVO process makes sense. Bringing that kind of discipline and accountability instead of just, here's a bunch of fun stuff to do. Go try it. I just really like the I don't want to say the cautious approach, but the thoughtful approach that you're bringing to this world of change.
Yeah, one one thing that I want to ask you is, now we're both in marketing, right? So basically, I've spent I think my entire professional life, almost my entire professional life, into marketing, and I still think that I've missed a lot of aspects. So I've been, let's say, hypnotized about some aspects, and I just wrote a newsletter about the holy doubt. I mean, it's you should praise the moments when you are thinking maybe this is not right. Maybe I should be reconsidering this. And what I want to ask you is, what if the entire order of operations for big retailers which are adopting the digital commerce is wrong? Maybe they are starting with marketing, but maybe they should be starting with customer research and with modeling.
One of the things I like about customer value optimization is that it literally starts with the customer. uh, and I try to make this point all the time, whether I'm talking about customer lifetime value, customer centricity, customer base audit. For too many companies, whether they want to admit it or not, they'll often say, the customer is job one. We can't sleep at night until the customer is satisfied. They'll say a lot of stuff, but too often the customer is trailing the product or the message or the brand. Let's literally and figuratively put the customer first and understand everything about the customer, their genuine wants and needs, their past behavior. And again, we can do that, but it's hard for companies to prioritize it, and it's hard to pick and choose among all the different techniques and technologies to do it most effectively.
Yeah, and one aspect that I find it intriguing is that I mean, now there are 2 years since I've started to write this book. It was an interesting journey like a roller coaster, like an emotional roller coaster. Like nobody's gonna adopt this. Nobody's gonna read this. This is too complicated. This is amazing. It's well written and whatever. So after these 2 years, I realized that I haven't put enough emphasis on the adoption of an experimentation mindset, because at the end of the day, a customer value optimization process needs to be adopted at the company level. It requires many departments, and I think and maybe we can enrich this the book in itself, thanks to your presence here, by giving a few tips and tricks for companies which are willing to adopt such a new mentality, but they lack let's say, a process to adopt this change, because it requires change. If you are an industrial coming from the 50s and you are big enough, and you've just adopted these digital channels, I think it's hard to make this type of customer-centric approach instead of product-centric approach.
It's so true that look, it again, you hit the nail on the head. Adaptive experimentation, whether it's a simple A/B test or a series of A/B tests, or a multivariate with lots of things varying. That's the key to the whole thing. But the problem is that just running a bunch of tests. Okay, what test are we going to run next? Okay, we have the results of that last one, without having your eyes on the prize, without really understanding what the ultimate objective is. It's not just how do we maximize the effectiveness of that next test that we run. It's having meaningful long run profit objectives. It's so important. And again, it's an example where, because we have this capability to do all this test and learn, we just keep hammering everything with just a different test, but we sometimes fail to string them all together, to do the different kind of meta learning across them, or to understand, what's the strategic objective that we're trying to go after. So it's just another example where kind of an infatuation with technology and change for its own sake can often get in the way. But when that stuff is done well, when you genuinely learn from each test and think very carefully about what is the next one to run and how will we judge its effectiveness, amazing things can happen. That's what can really separate companies out. The ones who just do, or the ones who do, think. And I think your approach really emphasizes that idea of learning, not just from the test, but diving deeper to really dig into the customer insights and the voice of the customer. It all fits together nicely.
Yeah. Professor Feder, at Theta, you have this customer value-based audit. And I know that you're a pioneer in this space. I know that you're possessing one of the strongest voice towards changing how the companies are being evaluated. But also, I've seen that there is a lot of adversity because of the old ways, because of the old EBITDA, financial-oriented things, which are not, let's say, easy to abandon. And I wanna touch on this subject, on how to build this bridge between the finance and the marketing and the board of the organizations, because at the end of the day, if the CLV is the KPI, as I've stated there, if the CLV is the KPI of the CEO, then the CEO can adopt it or not. But who's going to, let's say, verify the CEO if he or she is doing the job? And which means that maybe the board of the organizations should be the one in charge to lead this type of change.
It's such a good point. So I've so much to say. First of all, from my own story, is I've kind of succeeded in spite of myself, which is to say, I'm out there maybe pushing a little bit too fast, a little bit too hard, basically telling people you're doing it all wrong. Follow me instead, and that's a mistake. It just makes it that much harder. It gets people to kind of push back and get defensive. And again, I've managed to kind of break through at times because people kind of on their own wanted to move in the direction, customer value and so on. But when it comes to finance, you can't do that. When it comes to finance, you cannot go to finance executives or external stakeholders and say, you're doing it all wrong. You just can't do that. They're not going to listen to you. Plus, with all the kind of accounting standards, and I mean, it's just much more, strong standards and regulations around what it is we are going to disclose and how we're going to judge our success. So after years of basically going to finance people and saying, you're doing it all wrong, you need to listen to us marketers. So stupid. That's when I met Dan McCarthy. And of course, Dan as well. And Dan has done such a great job of saying, we're not going to win them over unless we do things on their terms. So we can't tell them to drop EBITDA. We can't tell them to ignore cash flow. We can't just make up marketing jargon and say, you need to, calculate and disclose this. We need to find a way to take our models, our insights, our methods, and make them fit within the world of finance. And again, that's what Dan has done so well, is to speak their language, but show them how our tools are going to help them speak their language more eloquently. So we can take our marketing models and just help them understand, to forecast revenue and EBITDA and free cash effectively than they would without those models. So there's an area where we absolutely hit the wall, and it's important for us to adapt to them instead of the other way around. And that's probably been the biggest success that Theta has had, is weaving the marketing stuff into the financial world, but without telling the financial people that they're doing things wrong. There's a case where we have to adapt to them. And I'm glad I've met Dan. I'm glad I've actually not only adopted his way of thinking, but have completely abandoned some of the ways that I used to think and some things that I used to say, no, I don't believe that anymore. Don't even read that. We have to learn, we have to adapt, and this won't be the last time for me.
Yeah, I do appreciate that you're stating this, because I have the same experience, and I think most of the times those people were saying to themselves, who do you think you are? I mean, everyone does this. We are it's like going to speak to a doctor how to do his job. I mean,
no, it's such a good point. Is you kind of tie it all together. In marketing, it's all about change. You can't change fast enough. Keep changing. But in finance, it's all about stability. Don't change. And so, yeah, it's really hard to simultaneously work with both of those mindsets and to make them fit together. And I don't by no means want to say we've cracked the code, we figured it out. That there's still a lot of work to do to be able to do it more effectively and so on. And again, that's why the work that I'm doing by myself and with Dan McCarthy and Theta, the work that you're doing, which has some wonderful overlap, but also some differences. We all need to compare notes. We all need to find a new set of best practices. And I think we're getting there. We're making good progress now, instead of just kind of screaming and complaining and again just changing for the sake of doing so.
Yeah, I think this transition requires a lot of patience, and I also feel like being being so early in this early. I mean, you are early. I'm just I'm just, let's say, one of the early adopters, of your work, because basically I've built on top of work such as yours and Professor Dan McCarthy's as well. So because I had zero academic background on this, at least, right? So that's why I'm grateful for your presence in my life and for being one of the supporters of this endeavor. But I do think the timeline. I mean, I have a totally different relationship with the time when this is going to become a reality. So maybe if 2 years ago I thought that in 5 years people will do this, will adopt this is going to be the status quo. Now, 2 years later, I have doubts if this is going to happen earlier than 10 years from now.
It's so true. By the way, I feel exactly the same way. Every time that there's some kind of a big crisis or change, whether it was COVID or today with just some of the economic uncertainty, I keep saying, when we get to the other side of this one, people are going to wake up and they're going to see that this other way of doing things and looking at things is going to, be the best way to go. And it just doesn't work that way. We kind of go back to our old habits. So yeah, it does take longer. There's no doubt. But at the same time, we are seeing a lot of different signs of progress, even if they're small. We're not talking about, I mean, look, the name of the book is the CLV Revolution, but it really ends up being more of a CLV evolution.
Yeah,
It's a
right.
generational kind of thing. So I like the bold words, but I also we have the reality check that we are talking years instead of months, or maybe even decades instead of years.
Yeah, that's correct. Professor Feder, thanks a lot for being part of this episode and for supporting me and us and the world with your work. That was it. It's a wrap up. We'll see each other on chapter 4, and all the best from Bucharest. Thanks again.
Great talking to you. Bye now.